week?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Well, we have some exciting news and we also have some really discouraging news to talk about today. Should we start with the good news?
Yes, let's start with the positive stuff first. Definitely.
So we have the book, Transing Our Children. It's a book that really is kind of a guide for people who don't know what's going on. So that just gives them all the information they need about what the gender industry is doing and the fact that there are no trans children, that this is all an attempt by the gender industry to, really groom vulnerable children into this ideology. And it's going to be released any minute now, right?
Any minute now. Yep, it's going through the vetting system at Amazon right now. So we're going to have it at Amazon. We're going to have it on our website, available as a PDF download there. It'll be available in paperback and in digital. I would love for you to just tell people what's in it. Like just flip through the table of contents, because you put a lot into this book. And I'm so impressed with everything you did and the chapters that you came up with. So just tell us what's in it.
Well, and Maria, I want to give you due credit too. You did a heck of a lot with this as well. So.
I did one chapter.
Well, it's funny because I'm from academia, and we, in academia, we list even the person who, mopped the floor in the lab kind of thing. And you did a heck of a lot more than that, Maria. I would say you're a co-author, but you wanted to be listed with. So
no, because I didn't do the bulk of the writing. I didn't even do half of the writing. So no, with is fine.
Okay. Well, and one of the things that you mentioned is that it's sort of a guide, but it also intersperses my story. And so I do tell a lot about my experience with a trans identity, which is actually gender dysphoria. And one of the things that I wanted to do with this book is to really emphasize that gender dysphoria is a real thing. It can be debilitating. It can be really confusing and scary and complicated. And a lot of people are sort of saying there's no such thing as gender dysphoria. It's just regressive gender stereotypes. And it's more than that. Unfortunately, I think that the American Psychiatric Association hasn't done a good job of really identifying what gender dysphoria is. Instead, they've sort of capitulated to the transgender lobbyists and modified the definition to meet what they want rather than what really is happening with people who are suffering from gender dysphoria.
And that is a disservice to the people who are suffering with it, because the American Psychiatric Association should be focused on people who are suffering. The reason that we have definitions of disorders and diseases is not just so we can create a fancy manual and isn't this great and we've got all these nice medical terms. It's to help people. It's so that you can look at what somebody is suffering, give it a name, give it a definition, and then come up with ways to alleviate that suffering. And by capitulating to activists' demands about what it needs to say and what it needs to be called and even how it needs to be treated, the American Psychiatric Association is serving lobbyists and activists. It's not serving people who are hurting.
Not at all. And that's what's so infuriating. I don't think I would ever have gotten into this, this whole movement had it not been for my childhood experience. But, my childhood experience was profound. It's been dismissed by some, saying it must not have been too bad because you didn't transition. Well, first of all, transition, thankfully, wasn't a treatment path when I was a little girl. And I'm so thankful for that.
Because it's not an appropriate treatment path for someone who's had trauma.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And so this book kind of goes through talking about gender. What is gender? What is gender dysphoria? There's a whole chapter about transing away the gay. I really believe that transition is the new conversion therapy. We're taking kids who are, effeminate boys or tough girls, and we're telling them that they're transgender because we have people who have fears that they might grow up to be same-sex attracted. And so I really think it's important for us to recognize that this is a really horrible form of conversion therapy, this transing interventions. It talks about autogynephilia, which isn't gender dysphoria and which needs to be treated completely separately. Again, the trans lobby has done a great job of having this huge umbrella and they're just pulling everything under it. People don't understand the nuances. There's a huge difference between an adult male who gets his sexual fetish satisfaction by looking like a female, by appropriating womanhood, versus a child who's suffering from gender dysphoria. Those are two extremely different things and should be treated very differently.
And there's a difference between, I'm sorry,
I was going to say, in neither case is the person born in the wrong body.
Exactly. And there's a difference between a child who has had sexual or abuse trauma and a child whose parents are afraid that that child's going to grow up to be same-sex attracted, or the parents who think, oh, isn't this fantastic to be brave and stunning and have a trans kid? So the parents trans their child. There's a big difference there.
And then there's also the autistic children who, increasingly are being sucked into this because they're vulnerable, and children who have eating disorders. I talked to somebody who worked at an eating disorder clinic, and she said a lot of girls with anorexia nervosa are developing gender confusion because it's an opportunity for them to remove their breasts, which is sort of the last vestige of fat that they have on their body. And we sort of saw that with Ellen Page. I really believe that she had her breasts removed because she's anorexic. And again, I'm not a clinician, but that was just my, my citizen's observation of what was going on. There's a chapter about suicide that really pushes back on that narrative that if we don't trans children, that they're going to commit suicide. And actually, I firmly believe that narrative increases the chance that children are going to become suicidal, and that's unconscionable. There's a history of transing. This is a new phenomenon. Again, when I was a child, nobody even mentioned the possibility of me transing. The school psychologist intervened and worked with me. Other therapists worked with me. There was, a clear treatment path for how to get me to, kind of come to terms with the fact that I was female, rather than you're born in the wrong body.
And let's also talk about the children's book that you put together that shared your story so beautifully for kids.
Right.
And that's such an important book.
Yeah, very much written. This is definitely for adults. That's written for children, so that, and also for people who are interacting with children, so that they can understand that there are all different underlying causes for gender dysphoria. And it's not, again, because somebody's born in the wrong body. I'm just going to keep saying that. Then we go on to talk about what the research says, because again, there's no clear research to justify transing children. There's research that shows this treatment path is actually more harmful than doing nothing at all. These interventions are increase the risk of suicidality, self-harm, depression, anxiety, more than doing nothing at all. Again, unbelievable that this treatment path has been adopted, because we're basically setting kids up for bad outcomes. Then we have a very clear discussion about therapy bans and how dangerous those are. The therapy that I got as a child is no longer legal in the state that I live in. There are children, there are little girls just like me who have been sexually assaulted and are not able to get the therapy that they need because of these therapy bans. And that just, as you can tell, it infuriates me. These children deserve the right to have appropriate mental health services, and those services are currently denied in many states.
Because the lobbyists and the activists who are working to get those therapy bans in place would much rather that today you were a medicalized, looking like a man, that you think you're a man, that you've presented your body as a man, and that you would be medicalized and have to take hormones and have your breasts removed and have a phalloplasty. They would like that for you. That is what they wish for you today. And that's not where you are. You have accepted your body. You are a mother. You are a wife. You are a beautiful, beautiful, whole, healthy woman. And that is not what the activists want for you or for today's children.
And it just, for me, having children was just such a big part of the joy that I've gotten in life. And the fact that the only treatment path for these children now is one that will likely render them sterile I just can't, sometimes I just feel like I'm living in a nightmare, Maria, because
Yeah.
it's so unbelievable to me that we would be doing this to kids. I was talking to somebody the other day about Alan Turing, who was a gay man. And at the time it was illegal to be gay. And he was put on drugs that chemically castrated him. Well, now we're putting children on drugs that chemically sterilize them and castrate them. This is not a treatment path.
And
This
these are healthy children.
These are
These are
healthy children,
healthy children.
right?
Yeah.
We're taking children who have healthy, functional bodies and making them dysfunctional. We're inducing developmental delays. There's just no other case I can think of where we do that, where a parent would be excited that their child is going to be developmentally delayed, medicalized, and have lifelong side effects as a result of interventions.
Yeah. I can't believe it's absolute brainwashing, absolute brainwashing.
It really is. And so there is a chapter about the harms of medical transitioning and about detransitioning and talking about the backlash that these detransitioners get. Again, we have a lobby that completely celebrates when somebody decides that they're transgender. But if that person decides to detransition, suddenly they are often ostracized and bullied by the very people that celebrated their new gender identity. Again, really suggesting this is a cult. This is some kind of a religious ideology. The idea that there's a gender spirit that can accidentally be born in the wrong body.
You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the concept of backsliding. That, if you detransition, you've backslidden out of the doctrine of the religion. And that's really how they're treated. They're really treated as religious backsliders or apostates.
Right. I was just watching a video about how the Amish shun people who don't follow the rules or who leave the community. And that, again, it's a lot like that. These people are shunned suddenly. And a lot of them I see say things, and they're very careful about how they speak. They say things like, this wasn't appropriate for me. I don't ever want to interfere with anybody else's transition. Again, it's that, it really reminds me of that religious ideology that they've sort of accepted themselves and they're getting help so that they don't continue on this dangerous pathway, but they're so afraid to speak out against the religion. Which again, we see is very common in people who are coming out of a cult.
Oh, yeah, because the cult inculcates in its members these fears. First, it's the whole in-group, out-group, that if you're in the group, you're the virtuous, the righteous, the good people. Everyone who's outside the group, they're the toxic, terrible, hateful, dangerous people. And so being able to even step out of the cult takes so much courage. But then there's still, in many cases, that lingering sense of, oh my gosh, I've left the safety. I've left the good people. I don't want to say that they're not the good people. I don't want to say that they're wrong. And it takes a lot of time and sort of rediscovering the truth and rediscovering facts and reality and who you really are, to recognize, oh, that was a cult. That was a really dangerous, toxic, damaging cult. And these kids, they're not able to do that right out of the gate.
Right. Well, and the other reason that they're attacked is because someone detransitioning, or someone like me who realizes that it was an underlying issue that caused the trans identity, really basically shoots a huge hole in the ideology, because they say that your gender is fixed and stable and innate. And so if you have somebody who kind of questions their gender, gets gender confused, even transitions, and then says, oh, wait a minute, well, then it really illustrates that gender is not fixed and innate, that it's part of your personality that is very flexible and malleable and influenced by environment and other factors. One of the things that I hear said to people like me and to detransitioners all the time is, well, you were never really trans. I hear that all the time. People say that to me all the time. You were never really trans, which might be the point, right?
Yeah,
because they say that any child who says that they're trans is trans. Well, when I was a kid, I was insistent, persistent, and consistent. I met the definition of trans. According to them, I was trans. And now they're saying, I wasn't really trans because I didn't transition. So, you know, again, this ideology is just so full of holes. And
Yeah.
anytime someone speaks out about it and tells the truth about their experience, like mine, then it really illustrates just how weak this ideology is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so then we talk about grooming and recruitment at school, which is, you know, people have no idea, I think. I just saw a post on Facebook today, and it was somebody, she said, I went into my English class and the teacher asked for pronouns. I thought this was just on the internet. I'm like,
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's absolutely happening. It's being absolutely pushed at school. And I don't think parents appreciate what a top-down, intentional, strategic brainwashing this is.
yeah, we have people from gender clinics actually going into the schools and basically recruiting children.
Yeah.
This is such an insidious ideology. So we said this was the good news, and now I'm like, oh,
The
no,
good news
this
is that
the
you
good
have a
news.
book. The good news is that we have a book coming out that lays this all out. And anybody who wants to understand where this is coming from, what's happening, it's there. It is in your book. So that is the good news.
And the good news is Partners for Ethical Care is actively raising funds so that we can send books like this, books like your book, books like Always Erin to libraries and schools. Just recently, Partners for Ethical Care sent 15 copies of Always Erin to the Utah State Board of Education. And so that's something Partners for Ethical Care that is doing, that is fighting this ideology. So that's good news too.
It is. It is. This is going to turn around. More and more people are waking up to what's going on. I think the COVID pandemic was actually, it had some silver linings, and that parents got to see what's going on in their kids' classrooms. It's going to turn around because no lie can stand forever. Lies always fall apart.
Which leads us to the next thing we're going to talk about, which is, I think, some of the things that are going to start to push the dominoes over. So this week, two things. The first is that a complainant in a case against Hobby Lobby won. This is a man who came out as a woman, and it says the day after she legally changed her name, Hobby Lobby, the company where she worked for more than 12 years, denied her access to the craft store's women's bathroom. And the courts ruled that this man should have access to the women's bathroom. So basically now, if we go to Hobby Lobby, the courts have ruled that men can be in the bathroom there. And it's against the law for employers to ban a male employee from using the women's bathroom, simply because the man says he feels like a woman. So our rights are being undermined. And this, I think, you know, things like this, I think, are going to push people. They're going to be like, wait a minute, you know, how is it that he gets to, I mean, this is so you know, ubiquitous now. We're just seeing this everywhere. So that happened this week. The other thing that happened this week is that let me get the exact name. Elena McLaughlin wins the MMA debut. So this is a man who was in the special forces for many years, decided he was a woman and was going to fight in the women's MMA, which is the.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I want to say, no healthy, right man wants to use his body against a woman.
Yeah. This is an abusive male. This is an abusive man who wants to beat up.
He wants to beat up on women.
Yeah.
He's huge. Like you said, he was in special forces. He is a powerful man. An athlete wants to compete, to hone his skills. He wants to see if he's better. Can he beat the best? Can he be the best? An athlete has a sense of sportsmanship, and good athletes who are sportsmen actually are even impressed with the people who beat them. Like, wow, you know, you're more talented, you're more skilled than I am. And they keep working on their skills to try to improve. A man who wants to compete against women, he's a coward, for one thing, and a fraud. And he's not an athlete.
No.
He's not an athlete.
No. And it's interesting you mentioned that. Someone I know is competing in a bike race today. And so I was kind of looking at the various categories, and Maria, they have all kinds of categories. And the reason they have these categories is so that people are competing against, in categories that are fair. And so they have a men's category and a women's category. And then those categories are even broken down into age groups and into competitive levels. And so they have a level for someone who's never been in a bike race before, a male and a female, different categories. They don't compete together. In fact, they're not even let out at the same time. So there's a starting gate and they let them out in waves in the groups they're competing against. And they've determined that these are groups that are reasonable and fair. And I was actually watching the results of a race, a local foot race the other day. And, I was standing there waiting for my friend to come through, and man after man after man after man, old men, young men, fat men, skinny men, all kinds of men, some that didn't even look like they had run, in a race before, came through. And then the first woman came through. And then there was a mix, but mostly women. Why is that, Maria?
Because we know that men are larger, faster, stronger than women. They have larger lung capacity, therefore they can process more oxygen, getting the oxygen to their muscles. Their muscles are larger, their tendons are attached in different ways, so they have better leverage than we do. Men's bodies are larger, stronger, faster, more powerful than women's, and anyone who says otherwise is deceived or lying.
Yeah, and it's just incredibly frustrating. And I'm hoping things like this, this Elena McLaughlin, we're going to show some pictures down below of what this guy looks like. He's massive. This is a fit, healthy, strong male who just beat a woman, and is
just
so
physically.
snug,
I even
so
want to say
snug.
he didn't just win over the woman, he physically beat her.
Right.
In the sense of being beaten.
Right. And this should
abused.
not be celebrated. This is not competition. This is not reasonable. Women fought really hard to have our own bathrooms. For a while, there weren't women's bathrooms that were public. And so women were kept at home because they weren't able to go out for a long time. When I visited Washington, D.C., I was shown the women's bathroom, and it was added on after the Capitol was built because it was assumed there would not be women there. Having access to bathrooms allows us freedom. Well, now that freedom is being taken away. We're no longer safe in bathrooms. We're no longer safe in prisons. We have separate prisons for women because women are vulnerable. We now have males who are actively raping women in women's prisons because all they have to do now in some states is say, "Oh, I'm a woman," and they get shipped to the women's prisons. We have these male athletes who, are they might even be competitive against other men, but they join women's athletic conferences and they just wipe women out. It's demoralizing. And we fought for this. This is not about feelings. This is about protecting women's rights and protections. To me, it seems like, privileged men who are basically, they're suggesting that their feelings are more important than women's rights and protections. I don't even think that a lot of these guys believe they're women. I think that they're just getting their kicks off because they're able to, these are abusive men. They're able to infiltrate women's spaces.
We even at PEC, we get emails and messages from men who say, "Oh, I think this is fantastic. You feminists, you've been destroying men's spaces. You're getting what you deserve. Good. We're glad you're getting this." This is men who aren't even the autogynephiles.
Right.
This is your average, everyday, vanilla man walking on the street who thinks this is awesome. Because there are men who do not like women.
Right. And that's very clear. And now they have a whole platform. This culture has basically given these men who hate women a platform and an opportunity to express all their dislike and distaste for women. And I'm glad you said that, because one of the things that, I see all the time, women like us get threats. We're told to choke on my girl dick. Why don't you choke on my girl dick? Or, and I'm like, this is a threat of sexual assault.
Right. Women don't do that. Like,
Yeah,
if you and I got mad at each other, like, I wouldn't tell you to like suck on one of my body parts.
No,
that's
or
not
choke
something
on
women,
it. Yeah.
right. That's not something women say.
No, it's very much a sexually aggressive thing to say.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I get a lot of times is these horrible cis women are just jealous of us. I get that a lot. Like,
jealous of how beautiful I am.
Well,
like, oh my
you're
gosh,
old and ugly, and so you're just jealous of my beauty and my big boobs.
Right.
And so, like,
with the 5 o'clock shadow and the balding hair. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I'm really
but
jealous.
it really illustrates, like, this is not a group of loving, kind people. This is not a civil rights movement. No. This is a movement about oppressing, about abusing, about colonizing women's spaces.
This is about might makes right.
Right.
This is, we're bigger, we're stronger, we're more powerful. We can have anything we want.
Yep.
And if you don't agree with that, I'm just going to say I'm a woman, and then you have to give it to me.
Right, exactly. And I think that it's these AGPs, these men who really hate women, who are, exerting a lot of effort. Trans women are women. They're the ones who are really contributing to the transing of our kids. They're wanting to normalize this. They're wanting to pretend like it's perfectly normal for a child to believe that they're born in the wrong body. And that normalizes what they're doing and allows them to lay claim to women's sports, women's prisons, women's, basically appropriating womanhood, and telling women that we're not even as woman as they are.
Oh, I've heard that. You're not even as much of a woman as I am. Yeah.
You didn't have to fight for your womanhood.
Right.
As a young girl who had gender dysphoria, I just am incensed when they say, well, you're just a cis woman. You have no idea what it's like. Well, actually, buddy, I do. And I don't think that you actually do. I mean, I don't think that these AGP men are suffering the kind of emotional distress that someone with gender dysphoria has. And that's, again, why they have to be separated out. And we have to really treat these as very different categories. In neither case is someone born in the wrong body, but in one case, it's a sexual fetish. In another, it's a disturbance.
Well, and they have no idea what it is to be a woman. They don't know what it is to walk down a street at night alone and wonder if you're safe. Some years ago, somebody posted on Facebook, they had asked if we could impose a curfew on men so that no men were out in public after 9 p.m., what would you do? The story or the things that women said, they were very eye-opening, and they just broke my heart. Women said, I would go out to a bar with my friends and I would get so falling down drunk just because I don't have to worry about being raped. I would take a walk in the moonlight by myself and not worry about being attacked.
Right.
And as I really think about that, like, what would it be like to be able to go out in public and not worry about male violence?
Right.
And
we
those
used
guys
to have
no
some
idea.
spaces. We used to have some spaces where we felt safer, where we didn't have to worry as much. But now those are being taken away. Those are gone. It's interesting you say that about violence, because the other night I was looking for, a TV show to watch. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I just wanted, to sort of veg out. The first program I watched, it showed a woman being attacked in a bathroom and killed. The second show I put on, it showed a woman being choked by her husband to death. And I turned off the TV. I'm like, this violence against women is being accepted much more than it was when I was a child.
Well, and it's coming out of porn. It's coming out of porn. The porn is ubiquitous. I think like 98% of men have said that they've, taken part in watching porn. It's getting more violent. It's getting more brutal. And I've had the same experience. We were watching a movie. I can't even remember the title of the movie. But there was a scene in it where this woman's boyfriend comes over and they have this egregious sex scene where he turns her around, grabs her by the hair, and starts, having sex with her from behind. And he bends her over a table and starts doing that. And there was no reason for that. It had nothing to
Right.
do with the plot, but they and she was like totally fine with it.
Right.
This is what's being taught. This is why girls are opting out of womanhood.
Right.
If I were a young girl and I saw that, I'd be like,
I'm
yeah, I
out of
want no
here.
part of being a woman
Right.
if that's what it means to be a woman.
Yeah. Yeah. And it part of it is that we now have men defining womanhood.
Mhm.
And we need to stop and say no more. We need to reclaim our rights and protections, and we need men to stand up too. I'm
Mhm.
so frustrated with all these. I'm going to say it, and it might get me in trouble, but these white liberal males
Mhm.
who are just so big on standing up for these autogynephiles and
Mhm.
are basically willing to tell women to shut up and put up. And it really shows, like, okay, we've had, a push for protections and rights for quite a long time, but clearly we are not there yet.
Mhm.
We are a long way away because those rights and protections are being just completely erased in a matter of a couple of years. The Supreme Court is erasing our very existence.
Yeah. Well, and I'm frustrated with women who know that this is wrong, but they're too scared to say anything. They're scared to lose their friends. They're scared to be vilified. I have had so many people tell me, "Oh, I watch your Facebook profile. I so appreciate what you're doing. Oh, I saw that argument that you had with that trans rights person, and wow, you did such a good job." And I'm like, where were you? Why didn't you comment? Why didn't you say, yeah, Maria's right? Why didn't you say something? Because they're afraid. Well, you know what? You're selling out your sisters and you're selling out children.
Yeah.
Every time you do not speak the truth about this, you are giving the trans rights activists more power.
Right.
You are siding with them. There
And
is no middle road.
And in this case, it means women are being raped in prisons. It means women are losing their opportunities in sports. And it means children are being medicalized, put on a medical pathway that we know has seriously bad outcomes. That's what we're standing by and letting happen if we don't stand up. So like you said, I agree. We need to just encourage people to stand up, speak out, fight back. We have to stop this.
I have a friend I was just chatting with the other day. She's a retired drill sergeant. I love her, but she's just like, well, I can't say these words on here, but as a drill sergeant might say, but she told me she talks to people who, talk about, oh, the trans rights and we need to protect. And she's just like, no, that's wrong.
No.
Nope, that's wrong.
Yeah.
That's all you have to say.
Yep.
Nope, that's wrong. You
Yeah.
don't have
And
to go any further than that.
yeah, it's really easy to disprove this. The sports alone, there was a trans rights activist doctor who did a study who actually showed that, even after a year on testosterone suppressants and estrogen, that men have a significant advantage in athletic events against women. This is an activist who had a vested interest in showing that men could compete as women, and he couldn't even by massaging the data. A lot of the studies that we have that show bad outcomes are by activists. And
well,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. We just saw this study. You probably know which one I'm talking about, that came out that showed that the outcomes for transitioning are terrible. The psychological outcomes, the suicidal outcomes. And so toward the end of the study, they said, this just shows that we need to have more follow-up and better care. I'm like, no, this treatment stinks.
Yeah, it's a bad treatment.
Right.
It's completely ineffective treatment.
It was kind of like I was watching the Jazz Jennings show one time, and it was right before Jazz was going off to college, and Jazz was just like crying and sobbing and falling apart, and everyone's trying to figure out what's going on. And Jazz's grandparents, the grandmother said, I really hope that this doesn't mean Jazz feels like college is the wrong path. And I was like, oh my gosh.
No.
Yeah, college was the wrong path.
You have told your child that they're inherently flawed.
Cutting off his penis
solution is to damage their body. That's the problem. Well, hopefully next week we'll have some actually really good news, but I
hope so.
suspect, it's funny, every week I'm thinking maybe we won't do a PEC talks. Maybe nothing egregious has happened this week. Unfortunately, every week we find, again, like this Elena McLaughlin and the Hobby Lobby ruling. Every week it seems like there's something, but I do think that as more people realize what's going on, at some point this is going to turn around. So we can't lose hope. The part of the turning around is people standing up. And so we
Yes.
need everybody watching this to say no more and stand up and to, challenge your friends when they say something, challenge, and even like proactively post things so that people do start questioning, because we need to stand up and fight against this.
Courage calls to courage. You will not be alone. You may lose some friends, but are those friends that you really want to have if they only like you if you lie?
Right.
Those aren't friends I want. But you
No.
will not be alone. Stand up and say, no more. I don't agree with this. This is wrong.
Yeah. And come to Partners for Ethical Care if you have, if you want resources, if you want to connect with us, we're here for you.
Yep, we're here. All right, we'll see you next. Well, hopefully not next week. Maybe this is the week it'll all turn around, but I suspect we'll see you next week.
Hey, thanks, Maria.
Bye.